Morning, everybody. Edition of the Packard Network Live. We're coming to you. I'm coming to you live from Las Vegas in the U.S. And my special guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, is in Japan at the moment, and but from Australia, the great city of Perth, I believe. So. Anyway, we'll talk about that. So happy Friday morning to those of you in Asia that are up watching us on this Friday morning, and good evening to those of you in North America. And for the rest of you that I'm sure will see this on replay, please feel free to engage with my special guest and I. Um, Even after the live session, and we're constantly on LinkedIn, and we'll be very happy to engage with you long after this live session. But for those of you that are tuning in live, I see that we're starting to pile up here. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you're watching us live or not, and I'll be sure to give you a shout out. And more importantly, feel free to tee up any questions that you might have for my special guest and I as we really get into today. We're going to talk about a rather unique approach that my guest has, where success can be reverse engineered through a very intriguing method. It was at least intriguing to me and a bit unique. So we're going to kind of get into that here in a little bit. But thank you for that. My guest today is Geoff Seow, who is the founder of MindAxis Life Coaching and the Path Towards Purpose newsletter, where he helps unfulfilled millennials create a meaningful life. And he can also help if you're not a millennial, don't worry. Stay tuned to this program because much of what we'll talk about applies to anybody as well. And my guest is an accomplished academic with a background in human biological science, neuroscience, and biotech. And so, with that brief introduction, Geoff, good morning and welcome to the Packard Network Live.
Good morning to you, Brett. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, fantastic. So, why don't we start out a little bit light here? How are things in Japan right now?
Things are good. I'm in Tokyo, in Shinjuku. It's bustling, it's busy. I've been here for a few days already, and I'm loving it.
That's fantastic. That's good. One of my favorite places in the world, and I'm sure we have a couple of people from Tokyo tuning into this as well. So we've got so far we've got Dr. Leyland here. Dr. Leyland, thank you very much for tuning in. Great to have you part of the program, and really appreciate that as well. And we have Ken here as well. Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We have Omar here. Omar, thank you. Appreciate it as well. We have Andrea Fitzpatrick here. Andrea, thank you so much for tuning in. All of you should be following Andrea. We have Edward Lightard. Sorry, Edward. I stuttered a little bit there. And we have Donald Massengale here as well. So he's been waiting for this for a long time. So that's great. Let's get the dialogue ramped up as Geoff and I get to deeper into the conversation as well. And Geoff, why don't we just maybe kick it off by, I gave a very top line introduction of yourself. Why don't I kind of start off by asking you, how in your life journey, your adult life journey, how did you wind up doing what you're doing now, helping millennials? Maybe you could start by telling us about that.
Yeah, so, for me, I used to be in the field of academia. It's where I used to study. But what got me onto this life coaching path is that I used to have a real problem with sobriety. Oh, you've kind of disappeared, but you're still there?
I'm here. I'm just featuring you on the screen,
Oh,
so don't no
gotcha.
worry. You keep going. Yeah, thanks.
I understand. Yeah, so I used to have quite a struggle, with drugs and alcohol in my younger days. Now, for me, I started to find personal development to pull myself into a good path. And this was a long time ago, about 3 to 4 years ago. Now, when I finished up at my old corporate job, I had a plan that I wanted to move on and be able to do something meaningful with my life, but I didn't know what. So at the end of 2020, this was during the COVID period, which revolutionized my whole life. I was able to see myself from different angles. I created an Instagram page called Your Daily Purpose, which still exists today. It's got several thousand followers. And I started to post content very frequently, and people used to come to me and message me and tell me how much I helped them during a day or whatever it is, because I'd be taking philosophical quotes, deconstructing it, and then giving out a meaningful message to my audience. And throughout this process, I realized that I was able to do something of value to the world, which actually before that point I never realized. I always thought that I had to follow the paradigm of getting a job, staying in there. I mean, I always knew I wanted to do something more, but I didn't know what. So, long story short, after a while, I discovered that I wanted to do something that could serve other people well. That's when I stumbled upon life coaching, because I myself bought a life coaching program to be able to pull myself out of the difficult situation that I was in for a long time. And when I was doing it, I realized that I really aligned to it. I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to do it to help other people with the same as well, to be able to find something meaningful in their life and do something purposeful. And then the more that I did, and this was about 2.5 years ago, I got certified in NLP, social psychology, CBT, alongside my academic qualifications. And I started to build up MindAxis life coaching, which launched almost 2 years ago now. And since that period in time, I've coached over 100 clients across the world. And it's been an amazing journey to get to where I am today.
That's fantastic, and I'm sure that that you're going through the rough time that you went through with the sobriety issue. I'm sure that's helped you better connect with many of your clients today, right?
It's definitely helped because,
Hmm.
a lot of us experience the same struggles in life, right? And when I understand what someone is going through, I'm able to empathize and also be able to show them that there is a way out, help them to find their own way out.
If we could, if you wouldn't mind, Jeff, for a sec, you and I haven't really talked about this part yet, but if we talk about the way out, which is where there is a way out, and I completely agree with you on that point as well. Let's talk for a moment about the way in, because obviously people get caught in this trap, right? And my question for you is, especially with the younger generations, how much of the way in to a problem, a dependency problem, is caused by instant gratification? What do you have a view on that?
I absolutely do, and that's a great question. So, our society today, everything, we should have it right now. You know, whether your business is successful
Yeah.
or you climbed the ladder or you make money in any endeavor, it should be right now. We're trained to be gratified based on the schooling system, right? We're told that if we put in X amount of effort, we should be receiving this much compensation. And then on top of that as well, you have social media, which is drip feeding us dopamine. So the more that we desire to have an instant outcome, but we don't receive it, it can ruin the way in which we actually work towards that goal, because now we have doubts, now we have confidence issues, self-esteem dips, and then that's where dependency can begin, right? Because when your life isn't matching up your expectation, you want to escape. What's the best escape?
Right.
Drugs, alcohol,
Mhm.
distractions. So I think there's definitely a link.
Dopamine, social media. They're even an escape route, right? Social media.
Absolutely, people can tunnel in
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think these conversations need to happen a bit more with that. I make no secret about the fact that I'm 59, so I'm kind of right on the edge of a baby boomer and Gen Xer, right? And I grew up in an era where when a movie came out, I had to wait weeks to see that movie, and if I was and the movie theater was only open 3 days a week, and I would oftentimes it would be sold out in the small town where I grew up, and I might have to wait months to get in to see a new movie. And now today, people can see it obviously on their phone, and it's a kind of a dinosaur example, but that when you grow up in an era of being able to see a movie right away, to be able to, I don't know, connect with somebody halfway around the world right away on a moment's notice, to be able to attempt to trend on social media if that's your thing as well. It's this instant. It's very much an addiction, and I would imagine that it's one that people. I mean, people also want immediate results when they start something. They do a diet. I mean, just look at Instagram. A lot of the peddling that happens on there, and there's some very legitimate programs on Instagram, but there's also some that take this pill and lose weight in 30 days. That type of thing where I got to have it now. I got to have it now, and that I think is a big problem. That's I know in the United States has led to a compounding of drug addiction problems and other things, primarily in some of the big coastal cities on both coasts of the U.S.
It's a very unrealistic phenomenon to expect things to happen straight away, because if we look throughout human history into our past, everything has taken a very long time to develop, from ancient civilizations to even the process of mastery, which goes for about 10,000 hours, which is equivalent to 10 years. That was the old way of mastery, compared to today, where it's like, if you buy this course and you do it for 3 hours, you'll be a master. And it's a completely unrealistic phenomenon. And when we tie in how we should be working towards mastery or gaining skills and developing ourselves versus how we're told we should have it straight away, there's such a discrepancy that we can struggle. So I completely agree with you, Brett.
Yeah, so I guess that anyway, I wanted to kind of point that out. We've got Erica here. Erica, thank you very much. Erica's probably tuning in from the central part of the or the Midwest part of the U.S., Oklahoma, my home state. So great to see you, Erica, as well. Thank you for tuning in. We have Dr. Leyland here that loves CBT. I got my coach practitioner certificate as well. If you're not following Dr. Constance Leyland, please make sure you do that. She does. Dr. Leyland, let us know in the chat how many countries you're now penetrating. I know that's a big objective of yours, is to really rack up the number of countries. So let us know that in the chat, and I'll give you a shout out. So Geoff, talk to us about a little bit deeper about your approach and how you help people that kind of knock on your door. You said you've helped 100 people, I think roughly 100 people. That's a pretty big number of people. I'm impressed by that. Talk to us a little bit more about the approach and through the lens of why, when somebody knocks on your door and says, "Hey Geoff, I'd like to hear more about what you're doing with MindAxis," kind of let us know what they can expect.
So when someone finds me, and it's usually through Google or social media,
Hmm.
what happens is they jump on a discovery call with me, right, which is about 45 minutes to an hour, and we
Hmm.
talk about where they're at. So for me, I want to learn about who they are as a person and what it is they want to achieve. That's the most important thing, right? To find out what they want to achieve and if I can help them. So for myself, because I help people find a meaningful life, that's more of like a tagline. But what that actually means is three things, right? It means helping them discover exactly what they want to do with their life. So this is the clarity component. What do you want to do? Who do you want to become as a person? We get very clear on every single criterion on that. Spend about 3 to 4 sessions doing that. Then we find out why it is it hasn't happened already. Because if you wanted that so badly, it should have happened already. So we have to look at things like confidence, self-esteem, past trauma, what's happening in their life right now. And we spend about 6 or 7 or 8 sessions looking just at that. We deconstruct all of it, and towards the end, like throughout pretty much 90% of the clients that I work with, they go from the very beginning not being clear, being worried about what's happening, to the end having confidence and actually reaching out to me and telling me they're doing XYZ, they're making this goal already. And it makes me really happy, because
Yeah.
at the very
Mm.
end of that program, we spend 3 sessions setting goals. So we set goals that go from 5 years to daily actionable steps that you can do every single day. You plug it into your calendar. But usually clients already start doing that before we get to that point, right? So when we get to it, we just start rolling. And then at the very end, what they've done is they've created what they want to do, who they want to be, They have well, they still have fear, but they learn how to manage their fear. And at the very end, they turn it into steps that they can action every day. And there's a strategy to follow. So that's how I
Ha-
help my clients.
yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about fear for a second. And
Mm,
everybody has it. There's different types of fear, ranging from, I don't know, maybe one of the more severe parts of fear would be fear of death, fear of severe health issues as well. And then there's a whole gamut of other fears as well. Fearful to expand into a new area, fearful to launch a business, to move from corporate life into entrepreneurship. A lot of different fears on the spectrum. I think we all tell us your perspective on how to look at these fears from a do you help people assess risk, do kind of plus and minuses? What's your approach to helping people kind of wrestle with that fear?
the first step is to understand where the fear comes from. Is a fear based in fact or fiction? For example, we can be fearful of things in imagination, right? Things that haven't happened yet, and that's anxiety. Or we can be fearful of things that have happened in the past and then repeat that cycle. So that's self sabotage. So we've got to understand where that fear originates. And when we're clear on where it originates, we can then find out if it's something that is completely mental or if it's a rational fear of something. Most of the time, it is mental based on a past experience, and therefore there are ways to mediate it. To look at the fear objectively and to understand that even though someone is afraid, it doesn't mean they should stop. In fact, a lot of the time, the fears that we have are what is pointing us towards where we need to go. Like, for example, us talking on this call 2 years ago, before I started doing coaching, I would have been absolutely terrified. Like I wouldn't even know how to talk. I would be sitting here, I just wouldn't know how to do it. But now for me, I've done it so much that I don't feel afraid. I actually look forward to stuff like this. I love it. But that happens through repetition. You have to constantly push beyond your fears to feel good about them, to know that you're taking steps forward.
Yeah, and I'll share something, as well, that what something I had to deal with back in, I guess it was, so I got married in 1997, October 97, and in 1998, so shortly after that, after I don't know, 10, 11 years with the same company, there was a reorganization. Okay, and we had bought a house and everything, actually, just before we got married. And got married and just ready to tackle the next phase of life, and there was a reorganization at the bank that I worked for, and my job was impacted. And all of a sudden, I found myself out of work. I was a top performer, but my job went away. And so all of a sudden, I was having to write a resume or CV for the first time in a long time. So did all of that and started to do that. And I didn't even have a passport at the time. And within 3 weeks, I was on a plane to Singapore, where one of my former bosses had actually called me with the same company, by the way. So that's the irony of this whole thing. I get kind of not really fired, but well, fired. I was out of a job, but not fired for performance. And job was impacted, no job, and get a call, say, hey, why don't you come over to Singapore? We need some help here. We have the Asian financial crisis happening, the back of it. So come on over and do it that way. So I was on a plane and went through a series of interviews. And, another month after that, my wife and I were moving to Singapore. And the rest of my career was international after that. And so before my job was impacted, and prior to that happening, Geoff, it was like it would just terrify me to death of getting passport, and getting on a plane and going to another country, right? And but my perspective shifted when that happened. And the reason I'm telling this story now is that I want to inspire others to say, the worst fear, if I go back to that point in time, and why was I so fearful about working outside of the country that I was born and raised in? And there really wasn't a good reason. And I was able to get over there, and I hit the ground running, and built an amazing legacy working across 30 countries for the remainder of my career. So it's those fears are rarely as bad as what we might think they would be as well. So I'd like to just kind of throw that out there as well. And for those of you that are bumping up against a fear, think about reaching out to Geoff as well. Any comment on that, Geoff?
Yeah, thank you, Brett, and thank you for sharing your story as well. I thought that was really interesting how you were afraid of jumping on a plane, and then once you had to do it, you really did it out of necessity. So that's a powerful story. Well, one thing I do want to highlight there, and also I've had this before as well when I was working in my full time job, is that the more comfortable our lives become because we don't have anything forcing us to move forward, so to speak. The more comfortable we are, the more our fears heighten, right? Like, for example, I mentioned earlier, if this was 2 years ago, I would have been terrified to speak to you live on LinkedIn. And now I look forward to it. It's because when your life is so comfortable and it's a routine, it's very hard to want to chase fears. It's very hard, but I innately knew this, and I knew that even though I was afraid to do all the things that I'm doing 2 years ago, I knew that I had to for my development. And so if you're listening to this and you know that there are things that you must do because you are, but you're afraid, and that's the only thing holding you back, there's nobody else but you, then ultimately it's within your power to change that. You're in control.
Yeah. A lot of that's within our head, right? I think that's what you're saying. In other words, it's inside, and there's not a whole group of other people outside looking in at you saying, "Why aren't you doing this?" That's really not happening. So these fears again are a matter of perspective. And the story that I just told about what I went through, it was all 100% in my head. And when I got into the real world and actually faced that fear head on, none of it came true at all. And I was able to thrive and flourish actually probably better in an international space because I had skills to bring to these different countries and really latched on. Was it easy? No, it was not easy. It was a ton of hard work, but the fact is that I knew that I could do it, and but I never would have gotten through that had I not taken that initial step, to just bust through that fear.
And I think it's admirable, and look at the legacy you've left behind as a result of
Yeah.
pushing through that fear.
Yeah, and so many others. I mean, that's just my story, but a lot of them as well. But I think it's an extra challenge today with millennials that, I mean, if you look at society today and all of the, the focus on instant gratification and different things, maybe you could tell us a bit about why you decided to focus on the millennial segment.
This is my favorite question. So the reason
Yeah.
I always focus on millennials is because when I was starting my coaching business, like many other coaches, I decided I would coach everybody, and it really didn't work out for a long time. For 6 months, I did that because I did a lot of pro bono coaching to understand the person that I could serve best, and the people that took the most action were millennials because actually we had the most relatability. I was able to tap into their motivations, their desires, because well, I understand that I grew up in the same period. So for myself, I wouldn't be able to coach someone else effectively that's younger than me or older than me because I wouldn't understand their struggles to the same degree. But millennials, we've all started off in the 90s, we understand what that world is like. So I'm able to help those people the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got, would you like to comment on what Andrea is saying here? Instant gratification leads to addiction, conditioned psychology, and physiology. Any comment on that?
Absolutely trains us. It's like the scenario of the mice in the cage, like where they're drip feeding the mice different things like different drugs to be able to get them to do a different thing because all it is it's releasing dopamine into our brain. And if you can control the flow of dopamine to your brain, especially in terms of social media, our notifications, the things we expect, we always feel like we have to be on the run. We feel like we're always chasing the next high or something. So I completely agree with you, Andrea. Instant gratification is ruining the human experience.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to that analogy again. Dinosaur era, everybody beware. Another one's coming at you now. I grew up in the 70s. My dad told me one time we were sitting there in the afternoon one time when I was, I don't know, early teenager, and he said, Brett, what's amazing is that in our and remember the context here, in the 70s there was no computers, no internet, none of these instant gratification tools that are out there. And he said, Brett, there's thousands of radio signals falling into our backyard. And we were in Oklahoma at the time, southeast Oklahoma. And he said, all we need is an antenna and a receiver, and we can tune in and pull in those radio signals and attract them. And that concept of a radio, how old fashioned radios operated, has really helped define my leadership as the years went by. Where I decided, just like the radio, you don't chase radio signals, you attract them. They're there. You put up an antenna, you attract them, you tune them in. Success is the same way. Money's the same way. I learned that as well. Money is something that you attract by building, working on your personal development, building your skills, being able to solve a complex problem carries a hefty premium on the market, and you start to then attract success, attract great people, et cetera, build great teams as well, and not by chasing things. So again, I get back to this instant gratification, that the chasing these things for dopamine highs and other things for instant results, it just it's a dead end, folks, and it's not going to lead to anything sustainable. If you occasionally you might get a big win, but the question is, at what cost? Does it has it worn you out? Has it burned you out in the process as well? Have you dealt with people that are suffering from burnout, Geoff?
A lot of the time, that's kind of what gets people to question their life narrative. Like, are we doing this career for the right reason? Are we making the right steps? What does the future hold? Normally, burnout is a point in time where people's perspective on the world becomes a little bit shaky because they're so tired of the life they're living that they seek out help to find the life that they want to create.
Yeah, and then do you find that how do you initially get them to kind of break some of the disciplines, habits, however you define it, to really get on a different track when you're first dealing with them?
The first step, especially for the first few sessions, is to understand who they want to be, number one. Like, how do they want to define themselves for the future? The identity, do they want to change it or do they want to retain it? And secondly is to understand what they want to do as a vocation to tie it into that identity. If, for example, somebody has a bad habit of drinking alcohol, or someone has a bad habit of eating junk food, but they want to be an athlete. This is just an example, right, for context.
Hmm.
There's no alignment. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to find out if what they want, who they want to be, is aligned to what they're currently doing. And if it's not, we're going to question that. Why are you doing it? If you know it's not going to take you to where you want to be, why are you holding on to it? Like, I'll give you an example. I had a client who he wanted to be a scholar. He wanted to be a writer. He wanted to start his own fitness business, but he was addicted to marijuana. And
Hmm.
for many, many sessions, we talked, and he just couldn't get rid of it until he finally clicked and he realized, if I don't stop smoking marijuana, I will never achieve the life that I want. And it just broke him. And now he's been sober for 7 weeks since we had that breakthrough, because he realized that there is no alignment. You can't carry on something that's going to weigh you down. You have to pick up new things that are going to be the vehicle to take you to where you want to go.
So, are you saying that you replace one habit with a different habit? Is that kind of what you're saying here?
It's a necessity because as humans, there's the void, as we call it, right? It's like when you sit down, there's just the emptiness of, like, what's next. And many of us have this. We use meditation or we use breath work, but habits allow us to stay consistent to what it is we want from life. So if we remove a negative habit, the negative habit's going to be beckoning us to come back because it was
Yeah.
so relevant. It was a part of us, right? But if we use something new to integrate into our life, then all of a sudden it starts to draw us towards a new pathway, because who we are and what we do is merely the result of the sum of our actions and our thoughts.
Right. Andrea is saying enduring happiness comes from being of service to others. Any reaction to that?
I completely agree.
Hmm.
One of the best feelings in the world is to help someone achieve what they want, which is why I do what I do, right? Because you get to see someone's evolution and growth. That's my favorite thing, right? Because seeing your own evolution and growth is difficult because you are within your own body, you're within your own mind. But when you see it for someone else and you know that you've been a part of it, makes you feel really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a great point as well. We have Paul Gunn here. Paul, welcome to the program. Great to see you here as well. And thank you for those of you that don't follow Paul. Make sure you do that and check out his book. He wrote an awesome book. So Paul, thanks very much for tuning in as well. So Geoff, tell us about again sticking to millennials. We've also got a huge wave number of people of the younger generation to millennials, Gen Z, right behind them. And these two generations, Gen Y and Z, the millennials and Gen Z, are going to comprise the bulk of the workforce in the very near future. And they're going to need some leadership. And that leadership is a lot of it's going to have to come from within those two groups as well. Do you have any perspective on just looking from a macro level at these two generations and knowing the workforce like you know it today, which is largely consistent of leadership from the older generations? Um, have you given any thought to what the future might look like and what will be necessary to prepare people for that?
Definitely an understanding of relatability, right? Because us younger
Mm,
generations are more dynamic. One of the major things that I've experienced in the past is that when the leadership is from an older generation, is that they have a different perspective on the use of technology, a different perspective on the use of on how things should be done, has to be done a certain way. But us younger generations are more adaptable. We like to do things quicker, faster, technologies at our fingertips. We're not going to spend forever writing out on a piece of paper. We just use ChatGPT, or we use Keynote or OneNote, whatever it is. We can just do things very quickly. So for the future of leadership, it is to understand how quickly things are changing, especially for millennials, right? Over the past 20 years, look at what's happened in this world. To understand how quickly things are changing and helping our teams and the workforce adapt to new technologies, new ideas, and embolden and express entrepreneurship so that everyone works together in a way that actually improves the company.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. That's a big one. Obviously, that the older generations think about, okay, well, there's this technology, so we need to use it as a tool and everything. But the younger generations, it's built in, right? It's just part of how the younger generations were raised. And I was telling somebody I was on a podcast the other day, and they were asking me a question, similar question to this, and one of the things that I said is I go to I have a view on artificial intelligence that I can either let it employ me or I can employ it. And in order to employ it, I've got to learn a lot about it. So there's a guy on Gen Z that I go to, and a lady in Gen Y, a millennial lady, and I go to these two people to learn all about AI and on YouTube. And they're my go-to people. And they're great teachers at how to, come up the curve on this because I don't know all of this stuff really well, but yet I'm smart enough to know that I need to, in order to employ it and versus letting it employ me, I better learn all about it. And so I think you're spot on about that, that folks, there's a big tip right here that if there's something, it doesn't have to be AI, but if it's cooking Indian food, for example, you can learn about it on YouTube from these younger generations. They figured out how to do it, how to teach it concisely, 10 minutes, and you can become a near expert on a lot of topics in today's world, right?
And the best part is all knowledge is at our fingertips. I mean,
Yeah,
same as cooking Indian
right
food.
there.
I've learned how to build websites. I've learned how to, develop code and do all
Yeah,
kinds of things just from YouTube. It's the most amazing thing in the world.
exactly. We have Ashani Nigam here. Ashani, I think, is in Australia, and great to thank you so much, Ashani, as well. And if you're not following her, follow her and check out her podcast. It's absolutely amazing as well. Tim Gleason, Tim, good day from Sydney. So you probably know Tim, Geoff as well. So great to have you here, Tim, as well. We have Andrea. Let's see. Andrea's got another question here. How do you suggest adapting quick enough?
So one of the things that I can recommend in adaptation is to have an open mind, because as humans we're rooted in our belief systems, right? It's what forms our identity upon the world. But the more solidified your identity is, the more you're going to reject a new premise because it's not advantageous or it may seem dangerous. You might be afraid, whatever it is. So to be adaptable, and this is something that I've learned a lot because I've been traveling right now for about almost 6 months, right? I've been throughout Asia. I haven't been back in Australia since last year. And for me, it's been teaching me, the reason I did this was to learn a lot more about being adaptable, funnily enough. I want to be able to thrive in any condition in the world, to be able to figure it out. So to be adaptable, what I had to do was I had to change the way which I saw things, right? Back home, there's a certain
Right.
way I do things. I have my routines. I have, I go train, I work every single day. It is the same day. But here, every single day is different. And when you make every single day slightly different, you become more adaptable over time because your brain has to learn how to deal with new situations. Your brain must adapt or you're going to fall off the bandwagon. So you have to learn how to thrive in your situation. So to be adaptable, in long story short, find ways to make your life different every day. Not necessarily harder, but if you can, challenge yourself as well. But make your days slightly different so that you're forced to adapt to that curve. And over time, you will become more adaptable.
I think that's great, and you've chosen to just immerse yourself in different cultures, which is having done that myself as well. That's the best way to learn. And if there's out of my 6 years in Japan, one thing that country and culture taught me, well, two things, I guess. One is quality. The very best quality anywhere in the world you find in Japan. Everything is done with high quality in Japan. And number two is patience. You really learn and understand because patience is embedded in Japanese culture and in Japanese business as well. And these are things that just some tips from Japan, and you can likely find unique other areas in other countries as well. But the best way to do it, Geoff, is what you're doing, which is just dive right in to a culture. I think it's great what you're doing.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Geoff, let's talk a bit. I want to talk about clarity, confidence, and resilience. And I want to kind of peel the onion on these things as well, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. But if you share your perspective on clarity. I know you're passionate about these three things, and they're very much the bedrock of what you do. But talk to us about clarity, how you define it, how you help others wrestle with it and get it where get that kind of clarity that they want, and why it's so important to have clarity.
Clarity is so important because without an understanding of firstly where you sit in this world, and secondly where you want to take your life, things like burnout, unfulfillment, depression, anxiety, they begin because naturally, if your life isn't great, and sometimes your life may not be great, right? If you're doing the same thing that you hate every day for 10 years, then that's a reality check. That's something to face. Now, when you have clarity, it's acknowledging that it's like, okay, I'm not happy with where things are right now. I don't have to take a pill. I don't have to smoke it away. I know I need to change it. I need to do something about it. That's clarity, is acknowledgement of where we're at right now. Then the next step of clarity is, okay, I don't like where I'm at. How can I change that? How can I do something that's going to make me feel happy? Because one of the big buzzwords that's around everywhere is meaningful. Everyone wants a meaningful experience. It's why we buy tickets to certain movies or go to certain events or travel to certain places for memories, because that's life. Life is about meaningful experiences. But if your day to day is inherently not meaningful, then naturally you're going to struggle. So having the clarity of knowing, okay, I want to take myself to somewhere that's going to make me feel meaningful, like I'm making progress and growing. That is the next part of clarity, knowing where you want to go, what it is you want to do. But underneath all of that, it's who you are. Who do you want to be in the future versus who you want to be right now? And I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is not in great shape, they're not training, they're eating junk food every day, they're drinking alcohol, but they know deep down that when they were younger, they were an athlete, they used to play sports, they were fit and healthy, but they're not happy with where they're at right now naturally because, their health is a bit off. Having the clarity of understanding, okay, this is who I am right now, but it's not who I need to remain. I can change it if I get a personal trainer. I can change it if I change my diet. I can change it if I take these action steps. That's the clarity of knowing who it is you want to become, what it is you want to do. So, in a nutshell, clarity is certainty on where you are right now. Are you pleased with it? Are you not pleased with it? Where do I want to take myself in future? How can I improve my situation?
Yeah, a lot of it is just opening your eyes, right? To, see it. You've got to see where you're at, and you've got to see where you want to be at, right? And if those things reconcile, that's fantastic, right? But if they don't, and oftentimes they don't, you can do something about that. And that's what I really want people to take away, that message today, that if there's an area that you need to open your eyes, and if there's an area that you're not happy about, and that you can be in a different space, okay? And as a human being, we can always make changes to get into a different space, then do it, right? But you've got to see it first. I think that's a great definition of clarity as well. Confidence, Geoff, you want to talk about that?
Confidence is a big umbrella term, right? Like, it's when we think of confidence, we think about being able to speak clearly or approaching different people, but actually that's on the very end spectrum of confidence. Confidence starts from within. When you wake up and you look in the mirror, are you actually happy to be who you are that day? Are you happy to go and do what you want to do? Like, it comes down to how you perceive yourself. Do you have any insecurities or fears about the world that keep you in a state of low vibration, so to speak? So your emotions and feelings are negative, right? That's where lack of confidence begins. When you're thinking negatively, it's like, I can't do this, I can't do that. Inherently, it means that there is no ability to move forward because your self-esteem is shaky. But when you build up your confidence, so you understand your insecurities, where they begin, your fears, your limiting beliefs, your thoughts and perspective on the world, and you realize that these things can be changed. Who you are today is merely a result of your past experiences. We're not programmed into this world to be created a certain way. Our life forms and defines us. And similarly, if you take different steps right now, you will change and define your future. That's just inherently the process of how it works. So confidence comes from knowing, okay, this is what's holding me back. Here's what I can do about it. If I do it repeatedly and enough, I will develop competency. And the more competency I have, the more confident I will feel about my life and who I am. And I can go out and do more things. It opens up a whole new realm of life, so to speak.
What role does momentum play in when you help people build that confidence up? Does momentum play a factor in that, Geoff?
Massive, massive factor, Brad. That's an amazing question. Because whenever we develop inertia, which is the opposite of momentum, tend to stay stuck. You know, we just
Yeah.
find that we're too comfortable where we are. So this is the reason why uh, we have weekly sessions. So when I have my clients, we have weekly sessions, and we have accountability checks via WhatsApp. Because whenever someone goes off to do their life apart between when I see them last versus when I see them next, I've found in the past that when there's too long between sessions, the old limiting beliefs come up, the old patterns of behavior come up.
Mm.
But consistency is what keeps pushing them forward. Seeing the growth and doing it consistently, and then you get momentum.
Absolutely, and it's contagious. It compounds. It's something that that just really builds, and you're going to get some things wrong. And I think it's important to no program is perfect, and there's going to be things as well. But if those programs have, in this my view, have momentum inherent in what they're in the toolbox, what happens is that it's a lot easier to correct course through a mistake, through a failure, if you're if a body's in motion, because it will stay in motion, as opposed to kind of waiting for everything to be perfect and then trying to start up. It's just too it's often too late if you take that approach as well. It's like trying to turn around the Titanic. If the momentum plays such a huge role in doing that. You've got to have that clarity that you talked about so that you can have time to avoid the iceberg, as an example, right? So they do work together. And the third one, resilience.
So resilience comes in when you're clear on what it is you want, you're confident you can get
Mhm.
it, and you have a plan to go out and achieve it. So the strategy I talked about earlier, coming down the daily action steps. Resilience is the ability to push forward regardless of when it gets difficult. Because ultimately, if you want to strive for something, it's going to be hard. If it was easy, what's the point? You may as well stay where you are.
Right.
That's the easy path.
Uh,
But if you want to change something, it's going to take work and it's going to be hard. But when you have resilience, it means your ability to tolerate struggle, tolerate pain, so to speak. No one likes pain, but some types of pain are good. Not pain in terms of, like, for example, when you go to the gym, if you're not getting any pain in your muscles after you work out, then it's unlikely you're going to see any muscular growth because the pain
mm,
that happens is a result of your muscle fibers tearing and growing back. And if we apply
right.
that logic to our lives, when we have discomfort from leaving the comfort zone, that is actually us growing. Our brains are expanding, our view on life is changing. So when we have the resilience, which is tied to the clarity of what we want, who we want to be, it's a lot easier to stay resilient to our path, especially if there is a clear strategy to follow.
Absolutely. And that resilience comes through experience, and a lot of it does. And if you don't have that experience, that's where seeking professional guidance, such as what Geoff offers, mainly to millennials, uh, becomes so important, because you can save people years, right, in learning something. They eventually might learn it, but the question is, how long will it take people to actually learn it if they have to do it by themselves, right?
If you do it by yourself, you can, and if you want to do that, that's completely fine. But you might be wandering around for a long time before you find what it is you really want. Versus investing in yourself, there's a twofold approach, right? And I actually have a piece
Yeah.
of content coming out about this next week. Is that when you invest, you're not investing just your money, but you're investing your time and your energy. So you're more likely to get a result because you're driven rather than sitting there and watching a YouTube video and there is no deadline. There's no cost. So why would you
Right.
change if there's no cost? So that's the power
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
investment.
Yeah. The deadline was I think Jim Rohn said the deadline was one of the best inventions of all time. Because otherwise, you might just be in that. I kind of tell people that you can become a full time student, right? If you never apply what you're learning to build resourcefulness, right, resilience as well, then you're just a full time student. You're just studying, 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 studying. You've got to you've got to study, learn it, study it once, in my opinion, and then put it to work. And that's really where you will make refinements, and how you can start to compound your own success and build your own resilience by being resourceful as well. So I just want to point out, Andrea saying perfectionism is the enemy of progress. It really is. Don't wait, folks. If you see yourself, using what Geoff talked about, you see yourself as one person right now, and you see yourself in the future as a different person, don't wait to get to work on that, because it will take a while to get going. So you might as well get going today. Might as well get going right away to start to work on, building, having that clarity, building the confidence, putting that confidence to work, and then the resilience will come into play as well. And get somebody to help you if you need that. I tell people all the time, if Tiger Woods needed a coach, Brett Packard needs a coach, right? So nobody. I have mentors, right? I have 3 or 4 different mentors. I have for years, and I wouldn't be. And these people don't micromanage, tell me what to do and everything, but they're people that I can, in a trusted manner, go to for certain things that are the big things that I have going on as well. And so solicit other people. That's where humans can really come in. Don't rely on artificial intelligence or Google or only YouTube videos for things as well. You want that interaction with another human that's been through some of these experiences that can really help get you over the hump more quickly. You agree with that, Geoff? Any comment?
I completely agree because as humans, we're designed to empathize. We have things called mirror neurons that allow us to modulate behavior from other people. So when someone tells us a story, we can imagine that in our minds because we understand the human experience, and we're more
Yeah,
likely to understand the things and footholds that we can use to grow according to their experience. Unlike putting something into ChatGPT and reading it, that's completely unrelatable. It's just splurting out text to you. There's no ability to see in your mind what you could achieve based on someone else's experience or how they can help you. It's a completely different thing.
exactly. Yeah, spot on as well. So there you have it, Erica. Thank you again for tuning in as well. I'm glad you enjoyed the program. Geoff, any parting words before we wrap it up today?
Nothing in particular. However, there's one thing I always like to say at the end is that based on our conversation today, in summary, time is short. You may think you have a lot of time, but you don't have a lot of time. For me, for example, 6 months has flown by like this. We're already in May. It's going to be June
Yeah,
next month. If you have things you want to do with your life and it's been bugging you for years, don't wait till next year. Don't wait till next month. Don't wait any longer than you need to. Sometimes you have to wait for certain opportunities to be open. But if it's available to you right now and all you have to do is start, and start. Because the
right.
longer you wait, the more you think there's going to be a tomorrow. Sometimes there won't be.
Yeah, I was telling my wife earlier today that I'm grateful whenever I wake up every day. Okay, so you know, you never know what the future may bring, and I'm saying that knock on wood as a completely healthy 59-year old, right, with no chronic issues as well. But I'm also smart enough to know that that can change in a flash, and I think you're spot on. So don't wait to pursue your dreams. Don't wait for the calendar. Why would you wait for a calendar? Turning the page in a book. There's one I always tell people about New Year's resolutions. I agree with you, Geoff, that the difference between 2023 and 2024 is actually it really comes down to 1 second when the clock strikes midnight. So what is that all about? What's different? So why wait for the clock when you don't have to do it as well? Tim is saying, great advice. Start now. Andrea is saying start now. I think that we've hammered home the message, Geoff, on this as well. And you're welcome, Andrea. Thank you for your active dialogue as well. We've got impactful conversation from a LinkedIn user and fantastic. So this is great, everybody. Thank you for engaging with us as well. Geoff, what's the best way for people to reach out to find out more if they're interested in working with you?
So, as we're on LinkedIn right now, the best way is my LinkedIn profile. Connect with me, please. I'd love to have a good chat. You can also go through all the resources in my bio. I have a free book you can download called The Visionary. It involves that step by step process that we kind of covered today. And you can do it as well within about 1 hour. It's a very quick summary. I've got my fortnightly newsletter, and I have a whole list of podcasts and videos and all kinds of things in my ecosystem. You can grab that from my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to check it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, folks, and again, I had Geoff come on the program because he immerses himself in different cultures and he's constantly, while he's teaching, he's also constantly learning as well, and then he redeploys those key learnings into his teachings, right? So, and I can tell you, as having multicultural experience myself from essentially every part of the world except for South America, um, it's something that's quite unique. And having seen different cultures, experienced different cultures, lived in different cultures, these are the kinds of people, people like Geoff, that you want to deal with, because it's you only pick up those experiences by actually experiencing them yourself, and a lot of complex problems in today's world can only be solved by people with multicultural views and experiences as well. So please keep that in mind. You've got somebody that's kind of been operating in one tunnel in one culture. um, you work with them and then you wonder why nothing's changing. Oftentimes it can be the fact that you've just got a that their thought process is part of the problem, whereas sometimes you have to go outside the box a little bit and work with people that have seen the similar problems through different lenses, and that's what multicultural experience actually gives you as well. And the fact that my guest here is in Japan right now is evidence. He's evidence of that, and he hasn't been to his home country since last year. So I think that it's serious, it's real, it's genuine, it's authentic. Geoff, I appreciate you taking the time this morning to come on the program and reveal your experiences, your methodology, how you help people, and how you are able to take um, matters like clarity, confidence, and resilience and help people put those to work for them. That's the formula, folks. Clarity, confidence, and resilience. That's what Geoff does. And so please reach out, follow him. You'll start to see this come through in what we in what you want to achieve in your life. So Geoff, with that, I'll say have a wonderful Friday. I'd like to thank the those that tuned in and participated. Thank you. And for those of you watching us, investing the time on replay as well, again, as mentioned at the beginning, please feel free to engage, ask questions with Geoff and I on the replay as well. So, with that, we'll see everybody the next time. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, everybody.